In the last couple of lectures, we have learned how to create records in database by making a post request and also how to fetch data from the database server by making a get request. Now in this lecture, let's learn how we can delete records from a database collection by sending a delete request. So if we go to our Angular application, here from this Angular application, we are fetching each task from this task collection which we have created in our database. And we are displaying each of these tasks in the UI. Now, if you notice, for each of these tasks, we are also displaying this delete button. So this bin icon you see, that is delete button. So what we want is when this delete button of any one of these tasks is clicked, that task should be deleted from the database. That means from this task collection, and it should also be removed from the UI. So basically, when this delete button is clicked, it should delete a record from this task collection. Let's see how we can achieve that. For that, the first thing which we are going to do is we are going to bind click event on this delete button. So let's go to VS Code and let's go to our dash component.html. There we are repeating this div for each task in the database. And inside this div, in this HTML, we also have this delete button. So this button here, it is the delete button. On this button, I am going to bind click event. And when this button is clicked, we want to call a method, let's say delete task. You can name this method anything. Now let's go ahead and let's create this method in the component class. So after this fetch all task method, I'm going to create another method and we are going to call it delete task. Now, in order to delete a record from the database, we need some unique key based on which we are going to delete the record. So if I go to the database, you will see for each of these tasks, we have this key. Okay, so this is the key, and for this key, this object is its value. In the same way, for the second task, this string value is the key, and for this key, this object is its value. And this key is going to be unique for each of the tasks in this collection. And using this value, we are going to find a record in this task collection and we are going to delete it. Now we are storing this value, this string value, this key value for each of the objects in the ID property. So when we are fetching all the tasks, what we are doing is we are creating a task array, and in that task array, we are pushing a new object. And in that object, we are also creating this ID property, and we are assigning this ID property with the key value, right? So in the task object, we are also going to have an ID property which will be assigned with the key of that task. And using that ID, we are going to delete the record. Now, how we are going to get that key in this delete task method? Well, here, when we are looping over each task using this ng for directive, so here we are looping over each task, and for each iteration, we are going to receive that particular task inside this task variable. So this task variable, it will be assigned with a task object, and that task object is going to have a ID property. So we are going to pass that ID by accessing it on this task object. So here we can say task.id. It will return us the ID value of that task object, and we are passing it to this delete task method. So in the component class here, let's specify a parameter. Let's call it ID, and we know that it is going to be of type string, right? So this ID, it is basically going to be the key value for each task. So for example, if I want to delete this third record, in that case, this value will be the ID for that third record. So based on this value, we are going to delete this record, right? Now, how are we going to delete the record? So again, inside this method, first we are going to access the HTTP client object. For that, let's say this dot HTTP. So inside this HTTP property, we are storing an instance of HTTP client object. And on that, we have a method called delete. And when we call this method, it is going to send a delete request. So here the HTTP verb is going to be delete. So it is going to send a delete request to the server, and it will delete a record on the server. Now to this delete method, we need to pass one mandatory argument, and that argument is the URL from where we want to delete the record. Now what will be the URL here? So again, let's go back to our Firebase database. Now let's say we want to delete this third record. So this third record, it is present in the task collection, and this task collection is present in this database. So the URL here will be the database slash the collection name, which is going to be this task, slash the document which we want to delete. Here we want to delete this document. So if I open this in a new tab, you will notice that that document is nothing but a JSON object. So here you can see it is nothing but a JSON object. So for that object, this value here, it is its key. So if we want to delete this record, first we need to access the database. Then from that database, we need to access this tasks collection. And from that task collection, we need to access the document which we want to delete. And we are going to access that document using its key. And again, this document here, it is a JSON data. It is a JSON object. So the URL here will be the database URL. So let me copy this database URL from here. So to this delete method, let's pass the database URL slash the collection from where we want to delete the record. So the collection name is tasks slash the document which we want to delete. And the document here is this string value dot JSON. Okay, now we are going to get this value in this ID property. So here I'm going to append the value stored in that ID parameter. Okay, and then after that we also need to use dot JSON, because the document which we want to delete, that is also a JSON object. So we also need to append dot JSON to it. So here in this way, this delete method will send a delete request to this URL. So it is going to find this database. In that database, it will find this collection, and in that collection, it will find this document. Okay, and it is going to delete that document. Now, this delete method will not send a delete request automatically. This delete method is also going to return us a observable. And we know that an observable will only send a request to the server if there is a subscriber for that observable. Currently for this delete method, we do not have any subscriber, but let's go ahead and let's add a subscriber for this delete method. So in the next line, I'll say dot subscribe. Okay, and we can keep it like this. But if you want to log the response, then you can also pass a callback function here, and this callback function is going to receive the response. I'll simply call it as res, and let's go ahead and let's log that response. Okay, with this, let's save the changes. Let's go to the web page and let's go to our Angular application. Now here we have an error and it says argument of type string undefined is not assignable to parameter of type string. So here the problem is this ID property of the task class. So if I go back and if you go to this task class, here we have marked it as optional. So this ID property, it will have either a string value or it will be undefined, right? But when we are specifying the type for this ID parameter here inside this delete task method, there we are saying that the ID is going to be a string value, but it can also be undefined. So here let's also use this or operator and let's say undefined. So it can be either a string value or it can also be undefined. With this, let's save the changes. Let's go to the web page. And now that error is gone. Now let's say we want to delete this third task from here. So when we want to delete this third task, in this URL, this ID will be replaced with the key of that third document. So this is the third document and the key for that third document is this value. So this value here, it will replace this ID here. Okay. And since we are making a delete request, this delete request is going to delete that record from the database. Let's see that in action. So let's go to our Angular app. Let me also open developer console here just to check what response we get when we are trying to delete a task. Let me clear everything here. And let's say we want to delete this third task. So when I click on this delete button, a delete request was sent and in the response, we have received null. That's because whenever we make a delete request to the server, in most of the cases, the response is null because we are simply deleting a record in the database in the server. So in the response, we might not get anything. But just to check if the record has been deleted or not, let's go to our Firebase database, and there you will see that now we have only 4 records. So the third record which was there, it is deleted. And if I click on this fetch task, you will see that now it is only showing 4 tasks. So one of the tasks is deleted. If I click on the delete button of this last task, if you go to the database, you will notice that this task that is also deleted. And now we are left with only 3 tasks. So now if I click on this fetch task button, now it will show only 3 tasks. So in this way, we can delete a record from the database by sending a delete request. And in order to send the delete request from Angular application, we can use this delete method of HTTP client. All right. Now here we are deleting one task at a time. So from the UI, by clicking on this delete button, we can delete one task at a time from this database. But let's say we have a requirement where we should provide user the capability to delete all the records at a time from the collection. That is also possible. So let me go to VS Code, and there let me go ahead and let me add one more button. So I'll scroll up. Here we are creating this create task and fetch task button. There, let's also create a button, and let's call this button clear tasks. And when this button is clicked, we want to delete all the tasks from the database. Okay, and here to this click event, I'm going to assign a method. Let's call this method delete all task. Okay, I'll remove this clicked from here. Let me copy this method. Let's go to dashboard component.ts file, and there, just like we have this delete task, we're also going to create delete all task method. Now, in order to delete all tasks, we don't need any ID value because we are simply going to delete all the tasks from the task collection. So for that, we are not going to need any ID value. We can simply access the collection and delete all the records from that collection. So there also we need to make a delete request. So again, we can say this dot http dot delete. And again, to this delete method, we need to pass a URL. But this time, since we want to delete all the records from the collection, this time we are going to make the delete request to the collection itself. So I'll copy this URL till here, and I'll pass it here. And we want to delete all the records from this tasks collection. So here I'll say task.json. Basically, using this URL, we are going to access the database. We are going to access this database. In that database, we have this task collection, and this is nothing but a JSON document. So we want to delete all the records from this JSON document. That's why we are making a delete request to this collection. Okay, and it is going to delete all the records from that collection. Now, since this delete method, it is going to return an observable. This delete request will be sent only if there is a subscriber. So let's also go ahead and let's create a subscriber for this observable. Okay, let me actually move it to next line. And here we are simply subscribing to it because we know that this delete request, it is going to return us null in the response. And with that value, we are not going to do anything. That's why I'm not passing any callback function to this subscribe method. Here also we can remove this callback function because as we have seen, this delete request, it is not going to return us any response. So there's nothing to do with the data. So we can simply subscribe to it so that the delete request will be sent and the record will be deleted in the database. All right, now if I save the changes, let's go to the web page. And there we also have this clear task button. Now when this clear task button will be clicked, it will delete all the records from this tasks collection. Let's see that. Let me go and let me click on this create tasks button. And if we go to the database, there you will notice that all those tasks are deleted. In fact, the collection is also deleted. Okay. Now, if I go to the UI and there, if I click on this fetch task, Here you can see nothing is being displayed. So in this lecture, we learned how we can send a delete request to the server to delete a single item and also to delete all the items from a collection. Now, before I wrap up this lecture, let's do one more thing. If there is no record present in the database, in that case, instead of showing this empty string, here we want to show that no task has been created yet. So for that, what I'm going to do is, let's go to dashboard component.html. There, using this div, we are displaying the task list, right? But before this div, inside this container div, I'm going to create one more div. And in that div, let's show one h2 element. And there, let's say, no task has been created yet. All right. And on this, I'm going to add some CSS style. So basically, I want to set text align to center. With this, let's save the changes. Let's go to the web page. So as you can see, when there is no task created, in that case, we see this message, no task has been created yet. Now, this div, it should only be shown if there is no task in the database. That means if this all tasks array is empty. So let's also go ahead and let's write that condition. So on this div, we are going to use ng if directive. And since it's ng if is a structural directive, let's use an asterisk before it. And to that, let's write the condition that all tasks dot length, if it is less than 1, then only we want to display this div. Otherwise, we don't want to display this div. So if we go to the web page, currently the all task array is empty because in the database we don't have any tasks. So we see this message, no task has been created yet. But let's go ahead and let's create a new task. Let's assign it to John Smith. Let's select the created date as today's date. Then let's select the severity as medium and let's select the status as open. Let's click on this create task button. And now if we go to the database, there you will see that one new record has been created. So now in the database, we have this task collection and there we have one record. So now if I click on this fetch task, it should show that task. And now it should not show this div. Okay. And as a last thing, what I'm going to do is from here, I'm going to remove this fetch task button. Okay. And what we want is whenever a new record is created, after the record has been created, we want to make a get request to the server to get all the records. So I will uncomment this line. And also, whenever a task is deleted, after that, we are again going to make a get request to get all the records. So after this, I'm going to pass a callback function here. Okay, and in this callback function, we are going to receive the response, which we know that is going to be null because here we are making a delete request. But still, once we have the response, we also want to call this dot fetch all tasks to make a get request to the server to get all the tasks. Let's do the same thing here. So here also we are going to pass a callback function. All right, this callback function is going to receive the response. And inside this callback function, once we have the response, we are going to call this fetch all task method to make a new get request to the server to get all the tasks. Let's save the changes. Let's go to the web page. So you see, initially we have one task in the database. Now, if I delete this task, after we have received the response, now you can see, we can see this message, no task has been created yet, because now in the database, we don't have any task. Okay, so that task is also deleted. But if I go ahead and if I create a new task again, and if I click on this create task button, after the task is created, it will automatically make a get request to the server to get all the tasks from the database. All right, so here we are only going to have two buttons, create task and clear task. Clear task will simply clear all the tasks from the tasks collection.